So grand final, you boys kicked the first 5 goals of the game. So my flow state was slightly altered. It wasn't panic state. We did a lot of work on the mental side of the game. I know you guys did too. A big part about 2015 was we didn't have any tools mentally to deal with a team getting on top of you on the biggest stage in the competition, in the league. 2018 we did a lot of mindfulness. We had a lot of strategies mentally to not get too concerned about the score. On the other side, you guys 5 goals up. What are you thinking?
I think you're pretty hyped. You're like, man, we've just come into a grand final. We've kicked 5 goals. We've kind of continued this momentum from the game before. We're definitely up and about. I think at that point you're going, how good is this? We might win the whole thing. But with anything, you get to that first quarter and you're like, okay, now you reset. And you're like, you just never know what they might bring to you that next quarter. And it's always like that. You go quarter by quarter and it's like you might come back from halftime and just get smacked. We had it like Geelong this year. We had Geelong, the same thing happened. They came back and just chiseled away and ended up winning the game. And I think that's one mentality in footy is you realize it's never over till it's over. And it's every quarter time they might, switch something up that's a totally different game plan, or someone might play a different position that kind of turns the tides and is able to kind of, bring the ball back in their half and score more goals. So, I can only speak from my personal experience, but I think we're pretty up and about. I think there's one moment I'll never forget that was Barras was playing on me.
Yes.
And
I was not putting my hand up to play on Mason. I'll tell you that right now. Too small for you,
probably
mate.
better forwards out there in the league than myself. But Barras was playing on me. I remember he worked me under on one. I was filthy because that's like the worst thing you can feel as a forward. Whenever the defender's got back shoulder, he just easily works you under, takes a clunk, you just look like an idiot.
Yeah.
He'd done that. It's 450. Someone was kicking it straight for me too, and I was like furious. And I hadn't really done much in that first quarter. I don't even think I maybe even had a marker or touch. And there's maybe another time in that first quarter where he went up to punch a ball and he came down and actually got his finger in my eye, and that was the start of my whole experience with.
I did hear this. So that happened in the grand final
with glasses. Huh. So Barras is the first person I had, I guess, an eye injury with. Wow. And in a grand final, everyone scraps. I don't say it's was meant to by any means, but you would experience this free kicks are very far and few in between in the grand final.
Yes.
And I was told that, but I never quite understood that until you play on the day, where you realize anything and everything goes. It is purely just who wants it more.
Yeah.
And that was probably my first experience, I think, of that first quarter where we'd gotten up, we were all excited. We get to that quarter time break and we're all just we're on edge. We're all oh, this is amazing. This is exciting. And then, you get to that probably half time. That's kind of where I guess y'all started coming back and started chiseling away.
I remember at some point in the game, it was either the third or first quarter, because I remember the end of the ground it was, and you guys had kicked a goal, and you might have kicked a goal. You didn't kick one in the first half, did you?
Nah, I'm not sure.
Maybe
third quarter.
Maybe a third.
I think you kicked your goal in the third quarter. And something happened, someone had trash talked and was bumping and pushing, and I came in, because I was quite physical that game. That was my thing that game. I was just going to be physical. And I didn't care. If I got reported for something, I didn't care. That was my last game.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
also, no red cards in footy, so you just might as well. If you're going to do it in the grand final and get suspended, do it.
So anyway, there was pushing and shoving. I thought I was going to come in and push Mason. I just remember, I never felt it on a football field. I came up to push him. It was just like a concrete wall. I tried to bash him like I'd been bashing everyone else. And it was just doing. And then he I lost my complete reach. I was too far away, but he still had another, his whole arm, and was just pushed me 5 meters backwards. And I was like, all right, I'm going back to the goal score on the small. This is
I've done my bit.
You remember that? I don't know. It's jumped in my head. So you talk about your eye injury. The first half, you personally, you don't play like you did in the prelim, right?
Yeah.
What are you thinking at half time? Because on our side, Jack Darling is in a similar position.
Yes.
Doesn't play well in the first half, but comes out and has a really big second half. And you did the same thing. Can you remember at half time anything that was said to you? Anything you thought?
I think it's. I mean, we're talking to some of the coaches and stuff. It's that reset mentality. And I'm sure everyone would have experienced it, where a coach says, what's happened in the past has happened. You can only change what's going to happen in the future. And Anthony Rock had come up to me and he's the person I'd probably had a close relationship with the club, and just kind of said, look, man, what's happened has happened. Obviously you haven't had a great half, but let's turn this thing around and see what you can do in the second half. And I think it's those moments where you have a coach or someone you really trust who has your back and knows what's best for you, and you would just give anything for. that you really listen to them in those kind of like stressful moments. You're like, my head might be in a million different places, but I feel like that direct kind of line of trust to someone else, you can go, okay, cool, I'm 100%, I'm just going to listen to him and what advice he has. So that was probably the big kind of turning point for me mentally, was just saying like, okay, like screw the past. What's done is done. We're still up by X amount of goals. Like, let's just try to finish this thing off. And that was kind of probably my mentality for the second half.
So Gov comes into that game. Jeremy McGovern comes in with broken ribs. Is that something that's discussed at all in the forward line? Like, do you guys, like, so for instance, like, I know it's hard for you as a current player, but if you came in, for instance, if you came in with broken ribs, I would have been targeting your ribs the whole game. I would have been trying to break them. Like,
yeah.
Is that spoken about at all?
No, not really. I knew if McGovern was on me, I would have definitely tried to smash him in the ribs.
Because you broke his other ribs.
Did I break his ribs?
Yeah, he did.
No.
So that tackle,
that's a huge. I did not know that.
Remember the tackle on the boundary line?
Jeremy.
Sorry, bro. Do you remember that? The tackle on the boundary. Don't know what end of it is. It's maybe the punt road end. You sort of tackled him out of bounds, and you broke his other ribs.
Oh.
So he had cracks in one side of his ribs. It was like a car crash injury type thing. He had internal bleeding, and he was worried about that side. You broke the other side of his ribs.
Oh my gosh. I feel bad. Like I'm one of those people. It's like I actually genuinely like. I enjoy like playing with people and stuff, and I feel bad when I injure someone. Like I genuinely do. Yeah. In the moment, don't care, but like after, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So apologies, Jeremy McGovern. I didn't know that, but that's a first.
He had a great battle with Barras. Barras gets in the best for that day, and he plays really well on you. But you have a really big second half and influence the game like you did in the prelim. You're taking contested marks, you're kicking goals. Can you take your mind back to the last quarter? You guys start well at that. You kick the first 2 goals, scores a level at 3/4 time, come out, kick the first. It's like the first quarter again. Yeah. You guys are up and about. Can you take your mindset back to that? What are you thinking again?
Oh man, I'm not sure how your experience would have been, but a lot of it's a blur. Like I think a lot of it, you kind of go back and you kind of think about it, and you're like, I wish I would have remembered exactly what I was thinking about at certain times in the game. Yeah. I've only maybe seen highlights of the game. I've never actually, you've probably watched it 100 times to be honest, but 101. Had a few on that.
I've never watched I watched 2015 once, so I know how you feel.
Yeah. So I just never have gone back and really watched it. I think maybe if I ever write a book someday, I might kind of dissect it a bit further, but in that last quarter, it was just kind of this, I don't know, like I kind of felt this pressure, but this also kind of like, I'm very weird, I feel like, whenever I think about AFL. I think of the experience. I always come back to like where I started from and everything else. And like whenever I'm in these kind of high pressure or stressful environments and stuff like that, I just go back to be like, dude, like, you didn't even know how to kick a football 5 years ago, man. Like, dude, just have a good time. Enjoy it, man. So I think that was probably my mentality. I think at some point in that the fourth quarter, kind of between the quarter time break or whatever, I kind of just like thought about it all. And I was like, man, this is so cool. We're in a big game. We're in the biggest game of the year. It's a tight game. Like everyone's kind of going at each other. And it's like, it's an absolute fist fight. How cool is this? This is awesome. Yeah. Like, I don't know, that's kind of a weird thing to probably think in that moment, but I was like, this is awesome. And I was like, all right, cool. Now what do I need to do in my role to be able to execute to try to help us win this game? So, that was probably it. And then I'm sure we'll probably talk about that last kind of passage of flow.
Yeah, let's do that now. Like, so I mean, I don't think that's that unique though. I've spoken to a lot of West Coast guys that thought the same thing about sort of looking like 100,000 people at the G, scores a level. And it's like,
you're just grateful. Yeah, you're like, man, this is sick.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think that's unique. I think that was shared across guys that have followed footy. Like, I'm a huge footy fan. I definitely felt that at stages. Let's talk about the last play. So this is the McGovern to Vardy to Ryan to Sheed, and West Coast had shots at goal. A few misses, a couple of posters, and sort of momentum was building, but time was running out. Right, so you guys just stayed in front, and Sheed takes that mark on the boundary. I'll say it. You don't have to. Sheed plays on. Sheed is shepherded. He probably
Hey, we're getting it first hand from a West Coast man.
Oh, well, it's a win's a win, isn't it?
Everyone puts the whistle away on the grand final.
But it goes the way it goes. I don't think the grand final's decided by that moment.
It'll be the most talked about moment, I think.
Correct. He may have had his eyes shut when he's kicking for goal. You have
front row seat.
I got
the best seat in the house to watch Dom Sheed win a grand final. It was shit house. It's absolute shit house.
It's in your game plan at Collingwood at that stage, don't know if it still is, for you to stand on the mark? Because you're the tallest guy.
So if you actually were to take a statistical kind of data on percentage of set shots made while me on the mark, I think it would be less than 50%. I don't know why, and I've noticed this throughout my career. I think people like shit themselves a bit whenever I jump up and they go, "Oh, maybe I'm a bit too close or something."
Yeah.
And I thought on the day, and this is actually I've never really talked about this, but I was fat, so I was on the other side of the ground whenever McGovern takes a mark. I was next.
Yeah.
And you just feel this hopeless feeling because you're not like, I mean, everyone kind of been this, you know, where you're almost just watching this happen. You can't have any impact, and you're just going, oh no. And I remember sitting there, I sprinted from literally like the opposite corner of the ground to go take that mark, like to stand the mark. And Dom Street's sitting there, and you know, it's kind of an angle. I'm like, oh, you know, chances are probably not that high, you know, like from a probability standpoint.
Yeah, correct.
And I remember the umpire came up to me. I'll never forget this because he goes, usually I'd kind of run up and I'd jump, you know, I'd try to like kind of throw people off. And he goes, no, stand still. And he wouldn't let me do it. And it was a very weird thing. So I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is not. And he goes, make sure you don't cross that line. He was really stern because no umpire really ever told me this, really.
Wow.
And on that kick, for some reason, he was like, no, you need to stand and you need to just only essentially jump up and down. You can't run out. Otherwise, if you cross it, I'm going to call 50. And I remember that being on that day, being like, damn, that kind of threw my little, like, you know, psych out of like kickers off. And he actually ended up kicking it way before, you know, he's an amazing kick and one that goes down in history, obviously. But that was one thing I remember sitting on the mark and I was like, this is a bit of a different thing.
That's
so
amazing.
Do you think he was trying to prevent, like he was looking out for you? Like, I really don't want to call 50. Like, make sure you don't. Or is it more?
You can imagine if he calls 50 there, Dom Sheed misses that goal. And then the whole grand final is decided based on an umpire's call.
Yeah, true.
He would have been Collingwood fans. Dude would not be alive today.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. But credit to him. Kicks a goal, wins the grand final. And, you know, the rest is history.
Yeah, it is.
When time's running out at the end of that game there, like how, at what point is there any moment there at the end where you're thinking like, oh man, that's it, like it's done? Or is it the siren that sort of made you realize that the game was open? Like, did you know there was only 6 seconds left when the ball gets like, kicked back into the middle? Or like, how aware of time are you?
Nah, you know, like this is also another weird thing about Australian rules is you don't really, it's like soccer, you like don't really tell. But then the weird thing is they have like, sometimes they'll have it on the boundary of how much time's left.
I've seen
they've
that
got
now.
some kind of sponsor.
Tissot
countdown clock, you know, like something like that. So we're just sellouts essentially. But yeah, so I think at the end of the game, you never think it's over till you hear that siren. And then once the siren kind of went, you kind of come to this realization of these emotions just kind of flow over you of all the stress of just finals in general and like the whole experience and everything else being finalized and finished. And now it's kind of like, what's the next step of moving on? And you watch it, you know, obviously you show the respect and you watch them go up and get their medals and everything else. And you kind of just sit there in shock and awe. Because like, you know, you talk about the beginning of the game, you're like, we had it in our hands, we let it go. And yeah, we just kind of sat there, watched everyone get their medal, and I think emotions flowed. I would say I probably cried. I want to say at that point, wasn't really too sure about anything. I was just like kind of in this empty space. And it was kind of this weird feeling of having an empty space and then having someone fulfill their dreams next to you. It's a weird thing on a grand final day. And but I remember getting back to the club or back to the rooms, and there's a point where I remember this very, very vividly. We're walking back, or I was walking out or something, and Josh Kennedy, he had walked past and he was holding a beer or something like that, and he had his premiership medal on, you know, and he was grinning from ear to ear. And I just remember just sitting there looking at him, and I just go, I'm actually happy for him. He's you know, that was probably something he's been wanting to do for his whole life, and he's now conquered that goal, and you can see exactly how happy he was. And I was like, you know what? Whatever happened in that game, you know, it is what it is. Everyone gave their all, but I'm happy for him to have that experience in his life. And that's one moment that I'll never forget. Like just after the game, that was pretty amazing.
Unreal. Appreciate you sharing that stuff, mate, because, yeah, I don't know if a couple of years after 2015, if someone hit me up and wanted to do an interview about it, I'd be like, given too much. So I've certainly from afar, again, you know, watched you, play, but then, you know, some of the other stuff that happens outside and seemed like a really thoughtful man and appreciate that. It's good shit.